All right, so this is our summer series going through the book of Nehemiah. We started last week looking at chapter 1, where we saw that this book is written by a guy who is very concerned about the state of the people of God. He's very concerned and overwhelmed when he looks at the situation of the people of God. He's just an average, normal guy who is overwhelmed, so much that he felt like he needed to do something about it. And we started tying that into areas of our life where there's something that we're burdened for, whether it's in our family, in our church, in our schools, in our communities. What are we going to do about it? And what we saw last week is Nehemiah did 3 things throughout chapter 1. He first sat down and he wept. He was able to let it overcome him with emotion. He was overwhelmed by it to start. Secondly, he knelt down and he prayed. Before he did anything about it, he talked to God about it. And thirdly, after he had prayed, he stood up and went to work. Who in here remembers what Nehemiah's job is? It's in the last verse of chapter 1.
Cupbearer.
The cupbearer. All right? Not cupbearer. Cupbearer. Okay? He's a human, not a bear. In this profession, he did what? He tastes food before the king eats it to make sure that it's not poisoned. Yeah. So any day on the job could be his last. Okay? Any day. Every time he shows up to do his job, he's like, I might not make it out of here alive. However, this position made him one of the closest people, the most trusted people to the king. This king was king of a country who did not follow God. In fact, this country had conquered the people of God in Jerusalem and torn down the temple and torn down the walls about 70 years before this and brought all of the young people from Israel into exile into this country called Babylon. It's like the kingdom of Persia, if you want to go historical about it. But after these 70 years, a lot of time has passed, yet the walls around the city had not been rebuilt. And Nehemiah is overcome with that. He said, if our city does not have a proper defense, because if you had a wall, that meant that your city was defended from its enemies. And there's no wall there, so anybody can just walk in and take over the city again. And we looked at how in our lives, we are supposed to have walls built up through knowledge of the Word and relationship with God and the unity of the Spirit in our hearts. We are supposed to have walls up that will keep temptation and the devil from getting in. Yet so many times our walls are broken down and we're not concerned about building up these walls and having protection from the enemy. So we're going to hop into chapter 2 tonight, and we're going to do the whole chapter. Every week is an entire chapter, so just get used to it. 2 tonight, 3 next week. But what I want to show you first tonight is a little nugget that's buried in verse number 1 that I think we can learn something from here, okay? If you looked at chapter 1, verse 1, it said during the month of Chislev, okay? That is November, December on our calendar. If you look at verse 1 of chapter 2 tonight, it says during the month of, what's that word? Nisan. Like the Ultima? No. It was a month on their calendar. During the month of Nisan in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes. Now, we might look at that and be like, okay, what in the world? Okay, that's just an introductory phrase. Keep reading. The important stuff is coming. That might be how we read it. But if you just do a little bit of digging into what that means, it can mean a lot for us, because the month of Nisan is in the springtime. We're looking at April, maybe even May. What can we learn from that? Well, Nehemiah was overwhelmed by it in November, yet nothing happens with it until April. How much time is that? That's like 5 months where nothing is happening. But you will see tonight that even 5 months later, he's just as concerned over the people of God as he was in chapter 1. His passion didn't go away. He did not stop praying. He had not given up. And when I think about us, how quickly are we to just pray about something one time and say, all right, I prayed about it, now God do something about it. And I'm not going to pray about it again because I prayed about it once and he'll do it if he wants to. I'm just going to go about living my life. How many of us do that? Yeah? And if it doesn't get answered within a week, we think that means God said no, so I guess, okay, I'll move on. But we have to be a people that prays, not just once, but prays constantly, over and over. This is so important for you to understand, that sometimes God will say yes to your prayer, but he won't give it to you immediately because you're not ready to receive it yet. Maybe the thing you're praying for, if he gave it to you immediately, you wouldn't know what to do with it. It's like a dog chasing a car. Like, when the dog catches up to the car, what's the dog going to do then? Like, he's not going to drive it, right? He's not going to know what to do. He just chases it because it's moving. So many times, we pray for things that we're not ready to receive because we're not working, we're not growing, we're not learning. Yet Nehemiah never stopped praying, but we're going to see tonight that he also never stopped working. If you keep reading, it says, during the month of Nisan in the 20th year of Artaxerxes, when wine was set before him, I took the wine, that was his job, and gave it to the king. I had never been sad in his presence. So the king said to me, why do you look so sad when you aren't sick? This is nothing but sadness of heart. It says, I had never been sad in his presence. Now, in this culture, it was very important that the people that worked close to the king had what you call like a happy countenance or disposition. Like they just had to look happy. Because if you don't look happy around the king, that could possibly bring down his mood. So you always got to look happy in front of the king. That's just, they were expected to put on a happy face. The king, I read one commentary that said the king had to be protected from sadness. So interesting. Protected from sadness. But there's something else here. He had never been sad in the king's presence. That's what it said. Therefore, the king could tell that there was something wrong with Nehemiah. Remember, he sees the king every day, right? The king trusts him more than almost anyone. And he sees his cupbearer having an off day, and he's like, Nehemiah, you good? Was there something in the wine? Am I good? Like, why do you look bad? I don't want you looking down. And it was because he always had on a happy face that the king noticed when something was wrong. And I think about so many of us, and even in my life, that we just walk around like this, even when we're happy. Yet when something is wrong, nobody knows because we don't look any different. How much could change if we started thinking about how I'm carrying myself? Am I putting on a happy face? I'm not saying like, just fake it till you make it type stuff. No, I'm saying like, will people know if there's something wrong in your life? Or will they look at you and be like, well, that's what they always look like, so I'm not going to ask. That's what happened with Nehemiah here. He always had on a good disposition in front of the king. And so when he was off, the king noticed. And he said, what's wrong? Why do you look so sad? And it said, I was overwhelmed with fear. And verse 3, and replied to the king, may the king live forever. Why should I not be sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire? Something in Nehemiah told him, this is it. This is the moment I've been praying for. And he doesn't even hesitate. He says, this is what's bothering me. I finally have a chance to bring it before the king. He opened that door. I'm running right into it. This is what's bothering me. And it just got to the point where he's like, what's the worst thing the king can say? No. All right, I'm just going to risk it. Risk it for the biscuit. Write that down. It's very important. So he finally just works up that courage. And as soon as the door opens, he runs in. And to his surprise, what does the king say in verse 4? The king asked me, what is your request? What does that mean? He's asking him, what do you need? The way he asks him in the original language, this is written in Hebrew, the way he's asking him, if you put it into today's context, it's like he's saying, here's a blank check. Write down whatever you need on it, and you got it. What is your request? He's saying, whatever you need, I'll give it to you to make sure that this happens. Right away, we see the favor of God on this plan, right? We see door after door opening for Nehemiah to step in and help relieve this burden that's on his heart. And starting in verse 5 is a big topic that we're going to talk about tonight, but what he does at the end of verse 4 is just as, if not equally as important. If you look at verse 4, then the king asked me, what is your request? You read the end of it. What does he do at the end of verse 4, right before verse 5? What does he do? Huh? He prays. So I prayed to the God of the heavens. Before, some of y'all need to write this down and live it. Like, before he opened his mouth, he prayed. For some of y'all, that's the entire sermon that you need tonight. You're good to go. Have your response time right now. Go on. I'll see you next week. Some of y'all, that's all you need tonight. Before I open this mouth, I need to pray to God. But it's interesting. Hasn't he been praying for 4 months? Why does he need to pray again in this moment? He's been praying so much about it. Why does he right now say, I got to get one more in before I bring this before the king? I think it's because, it doesn't say what he prayed, but I think it's because this prayer was different than all the others. Because every prayer he prayed for 4 months was a request to God. God, I'm burdened about this, and I want you to do something about this. I want you to open the doors so that we can go back and rebuild these walls. Yet I think in this moment, he's praying something else. He's saying, God, this is the moment that I've been praying for. Give me the words to say. Give me the words to say. So he takes a moment to thank God, but also just give me the words. I was reading, actually this was from a video commentary from this passage, and it's from a guy named Skip Heitzig. He's a pastor in Albuquerque. And he said, when you kneel before the King of Heaven, you can stand before any king on earth. King Artaxerxes was one of the most powerful kings on the planet at the time. And he was very intimidating. And most people were afraid of him. But Nehemiah knew that even this guy wasn't as strong as the king that he was praying to. And he knows, if I got God on my side, I have nothing to fear in this situation. When you kneel before the King of Heaven, you can stand before any king on earth. And all the way through verse 8, verse 9, you see this exchange between Nehemiah and King Artaxerxes. And one thing becomes abundantly clear. All right? Nehemiah wasn't just praying, he was also planning. He wasn't just praying, he was also planning. Let me start back in, I'm not sure what verse the next slide starts in, but I want to start in verse 4 at the beginning of this. And I'm going to go all the way to verse 8, just so we can get this whole exchange. Verse 4, then the king asked me, what is your request? So I prayed to the God of the heavens and answered the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor with you, send me to Judah, that's the southern kingdom of Israel, and to the city where my ancestors are buried, so that I may rebuild it. The king, with the queen seated beside him, asked me, how long will your journey take, and when will you return? So I gave him a definite time, and it pleased the king to send me. I also said to the king, if it pleases the king, let me have letters written to the governors of the region west of the Euphrates River, so that they will grant me safe passage until I reach Judah. And let me have a letter written to Asaph, keeper of the king's forest, so that he will give me timber to rebuild the gates of the temple's fortress, the city wall, and the home where I live. The king granted my request, for the gracious hand of my God was on me. That was a lot. There's a lot of words that you were like, I don't know what that means. But here's what you need to know through this. Nehemiah wasn't just praying, he was also planning. It becomes very clear that when the king is asking him, what do you need? It wasn't that Nehemiah prayed for it for 4 months, waited for an answer, and then the moment arose and the king's like, all right, what do you need? Yes, here we go, let's do it. And Nehemiah's like, okay, what do I need? I hadn't really thought about it. That's not what happened here, is it? No, he had a clear plan from start to finish, ready to go before the king even said yes. You see, we have to be a people that praise, but also people who plan while we're praying and waiting for an answer. We can't just pray and then be completely lost on what to do when God answers us. But we also can't just plan and plan and plan and plan and have everything ready to go, and everyone's been brought in on the plan except for God. I've heard people talk about this before. It's like, all right, we've done all we can do. Now it's all up to God. Oh, I'm like, well, have you prayed? Have you talked to God about this? It's like, you got a great plan, but does God even know about this plan? Does God even know what's a burden on your heart right now? There has to be a mixture. We have to go to God about it. But while we're waiting for an answer, we also need to be planning so that when he says yes, there's not a period in between where we're trying to figure out what to do. As soon as God opens that door, we are called to rush through it, ready to go. We have to do both. It's like this land that we're going to. We're building right now. We're getting the ground level. But what's going to happen when that building is done and we show up and we're like, what do we do now? That's not going to go well, right? But thankfully, Ricky has not just been praying about it, he's been planning. And every time I sit down with him, I learn something else about what is going to take place when we hit that land. And he's got a full plan for every single piece of the church, every single ministry, so that when we get to the land, we're ready to go. Why? Because we're not just praying, we're also planning. So Nehemiah prayed, and the prayer was answered. But he had a plan ready to go as soon as God said yes. He receives what he needs from the king, and he's on his way to Jerusalem. Verse 9, he said, I went to the governors of the region west of the Euphrates and gave them the king's letters. The king had also sent official officers of the infantry and cavalry with me. What does that mean? It means he's literally got the king's army going with him. Like, that's pretty cool, okay? Like, he has an actual cavalry around him. It's not just him on a donkey going to Jerusalem. He's got a crew, all right? Verse 10. When Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard that someone had come to pursue the prosperity of the Israelites, they were greatly displeased. That's a name, is it not? There are some names when you watch a movie where it's like, as soon as you hear their name, it's like, okay, well, they're the good guy. And then you hear other names, it's like, okay, they're the bad guy. Like Luke Skywalker, you hear that name and you're like, okay, he's the good guy, all right? He's not going to betray anybody. You hear a name like in my favorite Christmas movie, Die Hard, there's a man named Hans Gruber. You hear it, you're like, okay, that's a bad guy, okay? Honestly, in America, if we see any movie with a guy that has a German name, I'm just being real,
Bad guy.
they're always the bad guys. Just say it. That's how it is. But when you see a name in the Bible, a man named Sanballat the Horonite, you can't imagine he's got good intentions, right? Like, this guy's got to be up to something, and it's not good. And we're going to see throughout the book that that's exactly right. He doesn't have good intentions here. You see, him and Tobiah, they're not Jewish people. They had come in after all the Jewish people had been taken into exile, and they had started to build something else there that was not of God. And so now they're seeing Nehemiah and all of God's people coming back in, and they're like, whoa, this is kind of our turf now. Like, I'm not down with this. And so immediately we see Nehemiah facing opposition. And this raises an important point that's going to stay true throughout the rest of this book. When God starts moving, expect the devil to be close behind. When God starts moving, expect the devil to be close behind. I've noticed in my life that the closer I follow God, the more opposition I see in my life. Anybody can attest to that in this room? The closer I follow God, it feels like the more I'm being attacked. I can almost guarantee it. Like, as soon as we get back from Big Bear or D-Now's over, summer camp, I got kids less than a week later coming up and talking to me and saying, as soon as I got home, it was like everything went bad. And I'm like, I can tell you how that happened. It's because the devil doesn't like how close you're getting to God. And it's frustrating for us, right? We finally start making progress, right? We finally start feeling like we're closer to God, and then, bam, Sanballat the Horonite shows up, right? You see, these people, they're upset that the people of God are making advances here. And there's going to be pushback, all right? This land had been vacant for quite a bit of time. And and they felt like this was their land. But this land belonged to God before they even showed up. And the great thing about this is that opposition will show up the closer you follow God, but just remember that nothing can stop God's plan. Absolutely nothing can stop the plan of God in this situation and in your life. No greater illustration of this than when the greatest act of evil the world had ever seen, where we killed the Son of God on a cross. God used that, even the death of his only Son, to continue his plan of salvation. And in that greatest act of evil the world has ever seen, God used it for the greatest act of love the world had ever seen in redeeming us and saving us from our sin. Expect opposition to follow, but just remember nothing can stop his plan. Let's keep reading in verse 11. He says, after I arrived in Jerusalem and had been there 3 days, I got up at night and took a few men with me. I didn't tell anyone what my God had laid on my heart to do for Jerusalem. The only animal I took was the one I was riding. I went out at night through the valley gate toward the serpent's well and the dung gate. I bet it smelled good over there. And I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that had been broken down and its gates that had been destroyed by fire. I went on to the fountain gate and the king's pool. But farther down it became too narrow for my animal to go through. So I went up at night by the way of the valley and inspected the wall. Then heading back, I entered through the valley gate and returned. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, for I had not yet told the Jews, priests, nobles, officials, or the rest of those who would be doing the work. Think about it like this. Nehemiah was born in Babylon. He's never been to Jerusalem. He's never seen these gates, the wall, the temple. He's never seen any of it in person. He's heard about it. He's read about it. He might have seen the blueprints, I don't know, but he's never actually been there. And so before he starts the work, he's saying, yes, God showed me what to do. Yes, God has talked to me. Yes, I feel like I'm in step with him. But before we step in to do the work, we have to step back and evaluate how to do it. He didn't just go to Jerusalem for a vacation, right? He went because he got a burden on his heart. He saw that his city, his people were living in a rough spot, and something in his soul said, they can't stay this way. I have to do something. So let's bring this to our lives right now. What's on your heart? What has God put on your heart? Maybe it's something that a friend is going through, and it really hurts you to see them going through that. It could be a family member. It could be something in your school. It could be something in this church. Maybe God's laid someone on your heart. Maybe it's, starting a Bible study or going out and handing out stuff to the people on the street downtown Greenville. I don't know. There are a lot of burdens that God will put on our hearts. But I need you to know that when you have a burden, don't ignore it. Don't ignore the burden, because sometimes God is calling you to be the answer to the problem you see. Sometimes that burden is not God saying, look at that. He's saying, I want to use you to do something about that. And that's what made Nehemiah come here. But before he starts the work, he evaluates the situation. And this is what a great leader does, right? Like Nehemiah, it says he went at night. Why did he do that? He went at night because everyone is sleeping, including Sanballat and Tobiah, the people who were against it. So they would have no clue that he was up and evaluating the land. He didn't want the enemy to know what he was doing, but he wanted to know what was ahead of him before he started the work. I heard the walls were down, but I got to see it for myself. I got to see exactly what's in front of us before we start working. He evaluated what to do before he jumped in. And a lot of us today can be really impulsive. We can jump all in without stepping back to evaluate anything, right? We had a yard sale here a couple weeks ago, and somebody told me they were selling golf clubs over there real cheap. And I was like, I've always wanted to play golf. Let's do it. So I went over, I bought an entire set of clubs and shoes for $30, ridiculous deal. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be a great golfer. And it's going to happen immediately. And then I get out on the golf course, I hit a driver, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. And then I grab literally every club in the set that's not a driver, and I can't hit the flipping ball. I can't do it. I watched video after video. I broke down my technique all the way through, and I can't do it. And I just jumped into the game, and now I'm obsessed with it, and I can't stop, even though I stink at it. Like, I was so impulsive and jumped in, I didn't step back and evaluate, okay, this actually is one of the most obsessive games in the world. And I jumped in without even evaluating it. Yet some of us, so many times, we will jump in and we'll try to fix a situation in a friend's life before we even know the full picture, and it can ruin the situation with that friend. Anybody? Anybody have that happen to you? I've had it happen to me. Where I step in and I try to help, but I don't know the full picture, and then it gets blown right back at me, and I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know all that. You know? We have to evaluate before we step in to do the work. Because a wise leader knows when to plan, when to speak, and when to work. He didn't just post a story on Instagram right away. He didn't go live as he's walking around the walls and show everyone what's going on. No, he kept it a secret. He made sure, I'm not going to reveal to all the people, I'm not going to reveal the plan until I know the entire plan. He looked, he prayed, he planned. It's so important. Before you go out and try to change the world, you need to understand what's broken and ask God for clarity on what to do about it. Are you taking time to think? Are you taking the time to pray? Are you taking the time to evaluate? Or are you just reacting? Nehemiah evaluated the need. He became overwhelmed by it. He sought the counsel of the Lord, and now it's time to challenge the people. I promise I'm wrapping up. In verse 17, it says, so I said to them, the people of Israel, you see the trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned. Come, let's rebuild Jerusalem's wall, so that we will no longer be a disgrace. I told them how the gracious hand of my God had been on me, and what the king had said to me. And they said, let's start rebuilding. And their hands were strengthened to do this good work. Here's a sign of a great leader. All right? And you'll see as we go through this book, this is such a great book on leadership. All right? If Travelers Rest was a Christian school, I'd show up at band camp and I'd teach this. I promise. Here's a sign of a great leader. When you can get people to follow your passion. Nehemiah is extremely passionate and driven. But if he can't get the people to follow him in his passion, the plan will not work. This is why he started by saying in verse 17, what did he say? He said, you see the trouble we're in. Look around you. We're in a bad spot. This is urgent. We have to do something about this. The walls have to be rebuilt. We don't have a defense at all. And sometimes, if you're the one that starts the movement, you got to realize you're not meant to carry it alone. Teamwork matters. Community matters. You might be the spark, but you need others to fuel that fire. So are you inviting others into what God's put on your heart? Or are you just trying to do it all yourself? Are you trying to get people to follow in your passion? Because if you have a burden and you try to do it all on your own, you're going to burn out every single time. He invited all the people. They joined in the work, and as we're going to see next week, teamwork really does, as the cliche says, make the dream work. It really does. And so tonight as I close out, I want to challenge you a little bit. I want to challenge you to pray something, all right? And I even have a slide for it, and I'm stalling so y'all can write down what this slide says before I go to the next one. But there is a prayer that I want to challenge you to say this week, and it's very simple. It is one sentence, and it is this: God, show me what needs rebuilding and give me the courage to start. Show me what needs rebuilding and give me the courage to start. And if God puts something on your heart, I'm telling you, don't ignore it. Get quiet. Make a plan. Invite others. And trust God. One of the most comforting things about this book is remembering that Nehemiah was not a superhero. He did not have superpowers. Okay? This isn't Captain Jerusalem. All right? He's just a normal guy. He's a regular person who saw something broken and he couldn't ignore it. And instead of waiting for somebody else to do something, he prayed about it. He planned it. And then he stepped out in faith. And what happened? God opened doors. God gave him favor. And God used him to spark change. And so I want you to think about your life as we close. You don't need to be older to make a difference. You don't need to be more experienced. You don't have to have all the answers to be used by God. You just need a burden for what's broken. You need a heart that's open to pray. And you need a courage to take that first step, even if it's small. So is there something around you that's broken? Is it a friendship? Is it a culture in your circle? Is it how you see yourself when you look in the mirror? What would it look like to say, God, help me to rebuild this and give me the courage to do something about it? You might face pushback like Nehemiah did. You probably will, actually. People might not understand. But when God is with you, and when he gives you the vision and the courage, you don't have to be afraid. So many times throughout this book, Nehemiah says things like, the hand of the Lord was upon me. He knew that this was God's plan the whole way through. And he was just trusting that God was going to open doors and work everything for good. So your challenge this week, I already gave you a prayer, but I also want to give you a challenge. It's real simple. It's 3 things. I had to give you 3 points somehow. 3 things, 2 words apiece. Pray big, plan wisely, and step boldly. Sometimes we think when we're praying to God, we think we're asking too much from him. We think, oh, God's got enough to worry about. He'll get to me when he gets to me. So I don't want to ask him for anything too big. I don't want to bother him. But a lot of times the problem isn't that our prayers are too big. A lot of times it's because our prayers are too small. And a lot of times we'll take our prayers to God and God's saying, that's all you want me to do? That's it? That's a Tuesday for me. That's nothing. Some of you need to start elevating your prayers and start asking God for bigger things. But as you pray, don't just pray. Plan wisely. Evaluate the work. And then when it's time to act, you step out boldly, in courage and in faith. Because you never know what walls God might rebuild through you. So let's be people who don't just complain about what's broken. Let's be the ones who pray, act, and lead. Let's all be Nehemiahs